Finding a magazine that appeals to all the family is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Page the Oracle, the magazine on the screen.
Hello, I'm Carl Attrell, and you're listening to Teletext People. Teletext People is a social record of people that have been involved in either the production or the restoration or the artwork of the blocky medium that once dominated our TV screens in Great Britain before 2012. In the series, you will hear from the pioneers, the people who made it tick, and also people who have only recently visited the teletext medium but are in their own way keeping it alive for the preservation for others in the future. In this episode, we'll be speaking to the teletext archaeologist, Jason Robertson. I started by asking Jason what his first memory of teletext was.
I think I can actually pin an actual date onto this because I mean I was always interested in television as a child, so you know I used to just watch the test card and be more interested in the idents and stuff rather than the actual programs. And I was also I used to like watching the hidden sort of engineering announcements programs they used to have on the background. So I knew about the IBA, who were the regulators of ITV at the time, and I must have seen an advert somewhere because they came to the local museum in Stoke. The IBA did. They must have been canvassing public opinion and showing things off and stuff. But so I went to that with my mum. So and so we sat through the whole thing, and at the end they got all the technical stuff out to show, and they got teletext at the bottom. And so I went and had a go at that, and they were just explaining it to us and brought up this page on the screen, and it was one of these amazing teletext printout model things where you can put the page on the screen, you press a button, and a little printer prints out the page that you're looking at. So so they did this for me. So they put up a page because I'm like, how old am I now? I'm about 10, something like 10 or 11, and they bring up Oracle Kids and print me out the index page. So and out it comes out of the TV on this sort of silvery grey paper, the thermal paper, like thermal receipts and things you get in tills now are very nicely black and white, aren't they? In those days, you had silver thermal paper that was it's the same stuff that used to the ZX printer used in the ZX Spectrum and the ZX81. Mm-hmm. It was the same paper that was used in those, and out it came. This printout of the Oracle Kids menu page, and I've still got it. And the date on it is the 29th of April. Wednesday the 29th of April. And because we know what the day is, we can see what the year is. And I think it's 1981, isn't it? So Wednesday the 29th of April, I first had my first sort of go of teletext. Then after that, I remember going to. It wasn't actually with the IBA. It wasn't very much of a big go because there's lots of people there. Lots of people wanted to have a look at it because it was pretty new and fancy technology back in 1981. So I didn't have very much of a go. But shortly after that, I remember going to a relative's house. Didn't see them very often, but we went round and. I think they were hard of hearing because they had a teletext set, So I went round with my mum and my gran, and we got there, and the first thing they did was give me this remote control, and it was a teletext set, and it was like I had free reign of this teletext set for an hour, and it was the most amazing thing. It was like you could just with this remote control, you could bring whatever you wanted onto the screen, because before teletext, before computers, you just had to watch what was on. You had to watch what you were given. But with this, you could choose your own thing to watch on the TV. You could look up the news, you could look at the weather, you could read the jokes page, you could do quizzes. So, and I had this free reign of this teletext TV for about an hour or so, and it was like BBC One, BBC Two, ITV. No Channel 4, so that must date it. That must date. It must be before.
Sorry, 82.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on the today as we record, it's Channel 4's 40th birthday, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it was having a go with this TV with this teletext on. It was amazing, and I was in love with it after that, because it had this lovely bright graphics. Whatever information you wanted when you wanted it, it was just brilliant. So so I knew how great teletext was, but back in 1981, teletext sets were really expensive, and I remember going to London with my parents. That must have been about the same time. It was some trip organised through school. We went down to London, and we walked past a shop, and I saw this shop had got teletext decoders in the window. And I was thinking, wow, I didn't even know you could get those, these external decoders that you could convert your existing set into a teletext set. And we sort of walked past the shop, and they had them in the window. I thought, that's amazing. But I remember them being very expensive. And I've got the figure I've got in my head is £150. So you sort of you think, well, I know teletext is great, but it's just it's unaffordable for us. And the TV we had at the time, it was this massive dual standard set, so it got VHF and UHF on it, and you pressed the button to turn it on, and it was a good minute before it warmed up. So the sound came on immediately. So you could hear the program that you were missing in the background while they waited for the TV to warm up with all the valves and whatnot before the picture appeared. So that was just an ancient set. It was colour though, and it had weird controls on it, like tint and stuff like that. But I was always opening that up and messing around with the tuning. Things the tuning now is all via menus on screen, but at the time this massive sort of box popped out of the TV with rotary wheels on it, so you could change the channels. And anyway, that's got nothing to do with teletext. But one day we got rid of that set, and we got this new one, this Decca colour set, and it had teletext on it, and that was it. I was away. I got my, our own teletext set, and you could have a really good sort of rummage around. You could see it changing every day, and read up, and you get to know the page numbers and read your favourite bits. So this is about 1985, something like that, 85, 86, and you could read all these teletext pages and find all the hidden ones. Try and look out for a page that had an odd number. As the page numbers go by, because of course on a teletext set, when you put the number in, you can see the pages, the currently broadcast page going past at the top. If you watch that carefully, you can see what hidden pages there are. And it's like, well, let's see if we can find one here. 700 and something. What's that? You try and wait around the next time. Say, right, okay, so here the 700s are coming up in a sec. Let's just see if we can see what that page number was, and try to read the page number on the screen before it disappeared onto the next one. And then once you knew what the page number was, you could enter it in, and off you went. It didn't have page up and page down and caching and anything like that. It was just basically, here's your page, that's it. So that was always a favourite thing of mine, to go and look at the hidden stuff and the secret stuff, and I used to like the engineering information pages as well, of course, all those sort of things. And I think on that set, I first saw the level 2 test pages on the engineering section, and they had all these teletext pages. They were just normal teletext pages, but they said really sort of tempting things like, on a level 2 set, you would see a gradient going from blue to red or whatever, and you'd see higher resolution text. It's like, wow, I wish I could see that. That sounds brilliant. But it's I don't even know if there was very many level 2 sets around at that time to even. So even if you wanted to, you probably couldn't buy one in the shop. So it's just I really wonder what that looks like. But I'd seen in the IBA literature, I'd seen some broadcasting in the future pages, and they got like high resolution teletext showing there. They got like a circuit diagram with bits of test code and a graphic, and it looked brilliant. It was proper high res. And I think that was the level 4 tests. But anyway, those level 4 tests were actually broadcast really early. They were around 1980, 81, 82 time. There was the IBA did broadcast level 4 tests. No, there was no sets to decode them, of course. It was a totally internal thing. I only found those later when I came to start recovering teletext pages. Where are we on level 2 teletext? Are we? So this is like, when's this? Late 80s. This is now, and I think after that point, you get to. I kind of I just fell into being a normal user of teletext. I think I'd still be interested in the hidden pages if I could find any. I'd have a look, but I wouldn't go. I didn't spend an enormous amount of time on it that I would, because basically I was out clubbing and stuff. So it's there. I just became a normal user of teletext, and then I didn't see, for example, Oracle die in 1992 on New Year's Eve 1992 because how old was I? 21. So I don't know where I would have been. Not in front of a teletext set anyway. So no, I didn't see that happen live. I mean, we've recovered it since, so we are able to watch it, but not at the time. And then we had this brand new service after that in 1993, this teletext. And I don't remember reading it in the early days. I remember looking at it and seeing. I remember turning it on and seeing teletext on 3, and I was thinking, what sort of name's that? So it was that you had Oracle, which is the optical reception of announcements by coded line electronics. And but teletext was like, well, why have you called the company the same name as the actual? So it's just confusing. But after that, I mean, as I say, I was just a normal user. I didn't really use it a great deal. I don't even remember CFAX going into the dark ages. I remember them changing it, but I don't remember thinking, where's all the fun stuff? But eventually, teletext found its feet, and it was it's a pretty good service. I mean, we used to have Digitizer for a start, so I always used to read Digitizer. Not so much for the games, because I wasn't that much of a gamer, and I didn't have a console because I had an Amiga. But I didn't write any letters in to Digitizer. I wasn't that rabid. But I used to read Digitizer just for the entertainment. Really, it didn't matter what the game was. I could just read it for the humour, because I liked Reeves and Mortimer, sort of irreverent humour, that sort of thing, sort of nonsensical stuff. And there was a lot of that on Digitizer. It was just a bit crazy. So I used to like reading that. I used to like reading the Man and the comments on the letters, things like that. So I used to read that every day. I think I remember coming in one night, having been clubbing, and putting teletext on. By this time, I've got a teletext set in my room. Lying in bed, teletext on, and that it was on the news that Kurt Cobain had died, and it was like, I don't believe it. Yeah, it's 'cause it's like really sort of, well, that's I got it, you know, it's so I was a really big Nirvana fan, and like yeah, this is really sort of sad news. And so what year is this? This is like 94, is it now? This is about 1994. And yeah, I just carried on being a sort of a normal teletext user, really. I suppose the next sort of thing, really, I mean, at the later on in the 90s, I taught an adult education class at a local college, and it was I forgot what it's called. It was called Web Technologies, I think, and it was basically, you know, teaching adults about the internet and you know, how to create web pages, that sort of thing. Really, only basic ones. So it was all like, you know, people who were like retired and stuff, and came in and just wanted to know more about the web and stuff. So this is about 1998 probably, but I remember at the very start of of that course, I always used to say, now the internet is just like CFAX. Only instead of typing in a page number, you have an URL, have a web address, so it's a bit longer, and there's more colours and there's more pages. So, you know, just like CFAX, more colours, more pages, and that kind of like it sort of like makes it sort of anchors it with people. It makes it a bit more familiar. It's like, if you tell somebody that, they'll go, "Okay, I know what you mean." Yeah, it's like an analogy, isn't it? Like an expanded CFAX, really. And you think, fine, yeah, that's fine. But of course, spin on, I don't know, 30 years, and you find yourself saying to people that, CFAX was a bit like the internet, only with fewer pages and fewer colours. So it's entirely the opposite way around, is that people are familiar with the web now, but not CFAX. Whereas in the late 90s, everybody was familiar with CFAX, but not the web.
Just a reminder that if you're listening to this on your favourite podcast app, you can also find this on the YouTube channel. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can find us on your favourite podcasting app. You can find out ways that you can help with the show in the show notes.
And the next sort of milestone, I think, will have been in the late, in about 2010, that sort of time. Because I got this TV capture card, and I can't remember why I bought it, but it's. Yeah, that's right. I did it. I ran a website, didn't I, in the late 90s, called Sub TV, and it's still there, sub-tv.co.uk, and it's very late 90s if you go and have a look at it. Now, but what the video on that website was shot on using a Sony Mavic camera, so it was like this digital camera, but it had a floppy drive in it. So you could literally just put floppy disks in, and you would save your photos or movies or whatever to this floppy disk, and then you could like pop the disk out, stick it in your PC, and then you got your pictures right there. You didn't have to do any fiddling about to get them converted or anything, because the movies were right there. And the Mavic would output in MPEG 1. And so I would use that. I would loan this Mavic from work, video all this TV stuff to put on Sub TV, and so I got the Sony Mavic, and that's great. It technology of its time. I basically held the camera up to a TV screen, a CRT TV screen, and recorded these short videos, which was great. But you'd got it was wobbling from where my hands, sort of shook slightly. It wasn't the greatest video quality, let's say. It worked, but it wasn't the greatest. So I thought, well, we need to get a capture card to redo this stuff to get some better bits and pieces. But of course, when you get a capture card, they always come with, in those days anyway, they always came with a teletext decoder on them. So it had this sort of feature on. I remember giving it a go and thinking, no, that's great, yeah, but not doing anything with it. I didn't save any pages or anything like that. But then in the 2010s, I came across this website, and it was describing how you could use DirectX and a bit of software called Graph Edit, and you could create these graphs. It's basically like modular diagrams of bits of the computer system. So you would have what they call the crossbar of this video capture card, and there'd be a load of inputs and outputs on there. So you could have an input as being the VBI decoder would go into this crossbar, and then out would come. You could put that into a data slicer, and you could output that into a teletext decoder, and then you could basically create the teletext software out of this graph edit program, sort of from its individual components, which were based on the drivers that came with the capture card. But anyway, what you could do with that, what this website described, was a way of dumping the T40, I call it T40, the teletext information files. So it would input the data from the VBI, which is the sort of area on the TV screen where teletext lives, with all the flashing dots and whatnot. It would take the data from there, convert it into teletext data, and output it into a file. Now, you couldn't do that with the software off the shelf on these from these capture cards. You had to do this elaborate graph thing in order to be able to do that. You basically write your own software almost, but it was like in a visual form. So out came these teletext files, and it was basically raw teletext data. So it's you could see the header information with lots of flags and bits and pieces to say what magazine the teletext page was, and what page it was, what the flags were, and what row that particular line was on. So you could see all this teletext information there. And I remember because when it came out in this teletext file, it's not legible really. It's kind of, you can see bits and you can see the sort of structure of the page, and you can almost see words, but there's loads of like weird characters on, like lots of accents and things like that we don't have in English, and but all these letters are all over the place. It just looks like it's corrupted, but what it actually is that the computers read it in as raw, but teletext data is actually 7-bit and not 8-bit, which is what the computer gives you 8-bit information. And on teletext, the 8th bit is the parity bit, and it is what is it? It's odd parity, I think, isn't it? Off the top of my head. But anyway, so what it would do is it would put this extra bit in the data that would make a letter A, for example, turn into this weird glyph with an accent on it, or just a weird shape or another. So it kind of altered the original text into this weird sort of hieroglyphics stuff. So all you'll have to do to convert it back is to just chop off this bit and just ignore it. So you're basically left with 7 bits of data within an 8-bit word. And once you do that, if you strip off the bits, then you get text out. And I thought, oh great! So I wrote something really simple in Visual Studio just to do this, called Bit 7 Stripper.
That's a catchy name.
Basically, I know, yeah, that's what it did. It just stripped out bit 7 to get rid of it, to leave us with the text. And of course, out from that, you could see teletext pages going by. But they're all kind of interleaved teletext pages. I mean, if there's 2 modes for a teletext service. You can have it as serial or parallel. And if it's serial, the pages come one after the other. So it starts off at line 0 and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way down to 24. And then it'll start on the next page, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So it's all serials, all on a line. Each page goes out in order. But in parallel transmission, the pages are all kind of mixed up. So it might send a page from magazine 1, which will be could be page 100 for the index. It might send 4 rows of that, and then send something from magazine 2, and then do another 4 rows from magazine 2, then go back to magazine 1, send another 4 rows, and sort of interleave them like that. And that's how most teletext services are. They're kind of interleaved in that way. It means that if you have, let's say you're looking for a page, something on page 700 and something, and the teletext transmitter is on page 100, it means you don't have to wait all day for it to count all the way up from 100, 101, 102, 103, all the way up to 700. You don't have to wait all day, because it just sends them, kind of out of order, if you like. So the data that came out from this dump of the teletext raw data was all interleaved and stuff. So I thought, well, okay, I've got the text out. What I need to do now is to sort of write something to separate the pages out so I can see the pages again. And then bit by bit, I was adding a little bit on here, a little bit on there, and then I think we'll display this in teletext, in the teletext font and the teletext character set, because that'll make it look better. And eventually, I ended up with this software that could just display teletext pages from this data. Yes, I mean, I sort of started writing the suite of teletext software about 2010 to basically have a nose round and see what was in there. Because I'm very interested in hidden pages and things, but when if you have access to the raw teletext data, you can see exactly what pages are in there. You can get it to list them out for you. You can see exactly what page numbers there are. You can see any odd ones. You could write something so that when you can click on it and it will display the page that was there, or you can go up one page at a time to make sure you haven't missed anything. You can do all these things. Once you've got that raw data, you can do anything you like with it because you can see what's in it. And that's really interesting, because if you're interested in digging through the secrets of teletext services, then it's really interesting, because you can find out hidden pages. But there's even more to it than that, because you might think the hidden pages are just a page that isn't in the index. So usually on teletext, you go to page 100, find what you want. Right, I want the weather. Page 181. There we go. I'll go to there. But if a page isn't listed in the index, you wouldn't know it was there unless you saw it ticking by on the header row as it was searching through each of the pages. But with the teletext file, you can go straight there and fish that out. But not only that. Although there are 25 lines, including the fax text row, on a teletext page, the actual sort of spec of teletext, in order to make it addressable in binary for the computer to be able to address 25 rows, it's basically got the next sort of boundary up, which is 32. So there's a whole, 7 or so rows which aren't used. I mean, they're not displayed on screen because the screen can only display 25, and yet within teletext you've got room for 32. So, I mean, what the BBC started doing really early, as it turns out, is they would use these rows that can't be seen, these invisible rows, to put data in. And the BBC used to put racing odds in there. There must have been some sort of data service they were offering, but to bookmakers. But there was racing odds in there and things like that. And once you've got that, it's really interesting to look to see what else they've hidden away in there. There's a whole teletext spec on data transmission, and it's all formalised. A bit later on, it was all formalised, but in the early days, people, it was just shoved wherever. But it was all formalised later on, and in sort of rows 30 and 31 is where you get the data. There's all sorts in those data fields. There's things like it'll tell you what the index page is. So if it's not 100, it can be somewhere else. There's the full date with the year in it, etc. Things like that. Channel name. So when you change channel and the channel name came up, and you think, how does it know that? How does it know that the channel's BBC One? I've not told it. But that's where it came from. It came from the broadcast data service packet that was in on the CFAX. So there's all sorts of data hidden in there. There's all sorts of interesting secret stuff that you can go and have a rummage of. And it's all in the teletext spec as well, so you can pick things out. I mean, more recently, in the spec, it describes all sorts of stuff. There's really sort of there's stuff like slow scan stuff. So, for example, there is data video, which is basically really, really low bitrate video. You can send low bitrate video via teletext in these data packets, and there's audio as well. And that's actually been found. The audio has. We had data for that for quite some time, but we didn't have any way of decoding it. You could see it was audio. It had got like sort of two channels. So in the sort of data, you could see a split down the middle where there was two channels. And it's like, this is audio, but when you play it, you just got noise. It's like, oh, what you say, it's encoded somehow. But how is it encoded? We didn't have any documentation. But more recently, that's been decoded, so you can actually hear what the audio is that was being sent in these hidden packets in teletext. And it was it's things like audio descriptions for the blind, and things like program guides and things that it was used for.
This is an update on the Auditel program information from Saturday the 30th of July. The film Truly Madly Deeply, starring Juliet Stevenson and Alan Rickman on BBC Two on Saturday, will begin at 9:25, not 9:30 as we thought previously. The rest of the week remains unchanged except for an additional episode of The Bill at 8 o'clock on Friday the 5th. That's on ITV. Then on Sunday the 6th of July, Wycliffe, the police series set in Cornwall, begins at 8 o'clock. It was originally going to start at 7:30, but it was changed, so it starts at 8. Now, here's the updated rundown of the week's programme again. Saturday the 30th, Truly Madly Deeply at 9:25 on BBC Two. Monday at 5 to 1 and 7:30, Coronation Street. Tuesday at 9, Medics. Wednesday at 5 to 1 and 7:30, Coronation Street. Friday at 5 to 1 and 7:30, Coronation Street. And then at 8 o'clock, an episode of The Bill. Saturday the 6th at 9:25, the feature film Black Widow. And Sunday the 7th at 8 o'clock, Wycliffe. And all those programs are on ITV. We'll be bringing you a new schedule at the end of next week. Until then, thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying the programs that we're describing. This is Veronica Higgs from Auditel.
One of the more other interesting ones was I found something called Telfax in these data packets. Now, telefax was a sort of going back to the analogy between the internet and CFAX. This is kind of an intranet. The BBC's intranet, or CFAX is like an internal CFAX, and it had all things in it like bit of BBC news, phone numbers to ring, things like that. It's just sort of internal BBC information. But that seems to have been broadcast on occasion, so they actually escaped onto the onto the BBC network. You wouldn't be able to see it at the time. No one would have been able to view these pages because they were hidden in these data packets. But nowadays, of course, now we can process them. We can fish this out, and there's a whole new telefax. There's a whole other CFAX service hidden within the main one that's been broadcast, and it's such a back in the 1980s when I was like trying to find hidden pages by looking at the header, the page numbers on the header going by. You'd never imagine that. Anyway, so we're in 2010, and I'm collecting all this teletext data, and I'm writing some software to process it so I can poke around and see what's in there. I think it's about that time I was on Mike Brown's website, because he'd got a website called Teletext Then and Now, and he got like a few screenshots of teletext pages, and it was a nice site to go and have a look around. But one of the features he got there was a bit called An Evening with CFAX, and someone had basically, presumably meticulously, gone through and taken a sort of a snapshot of every page and CFAX in a particular evening, and but Mike had got this published on his website, and I ran through that and thought that it was it was brilliant, looking back at all the old pages and thinking, I used to love that section. I used to read that all the time, and look at these CFAX graphics are brilliant. And it sort of it really sort of took me back. The sort of old the telesoftware section that got converted into a computer magazine on CFAX. I always used to read that, and I think that was there as well. And it was like, this was great, but it was only one evening's worth. It was like, it's just the one. It was very nice to have, but it's like, it'd be great if there was some more of these. But Mike's website had a supporting mailing list, the Teletext Then and Now mailing list, and in 2011, 2012, Alistair Buxton pops up on this mailing list saying, I've invented a way of getting teletext pages from videotape. And it's like, what? You've got to be kidding. And so I thought, well, I think this is about 2011, and I thought, like, I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna have to try this out, because I got the capture card. It just happened to be the same one that Alistair had got, I think. So it was that was just convenient. I'm not sure I'd have done it if I hadn't got the right equipment. But the only thing is that it needed Linux to run. I knew nothing about Linux. I think I'd had a brief go of it in the 90s before it had a graphical environment or something. I don't know. It was, but nothing about it. And but one day I found some time, disconnected all my hard drives. I got a hard drive put aside for Linux, but disconnected the other ones, because when you install Linux, it basically flattens the hard drive. I'm thinking what I don't want to do is flatten the wrong hard drive, because I'll be very upset in that case. So I disconnected. It's a bit of a faff, really. You have to disconnect all your hard drives and put Linux on. I think it was Ubuntu at the time. Still use Ubuntu, but so I put that on because it seemed like the most user-friendly one to use, and I got the capture card in there, put Alistair's software on as per the instructions, and lo and behold, this is 2012 now, I'm picking up teletext pages from videotape, and it's like, I've got a big raft of old VHS tapes behind me to go through, and it was like, wow, this is like amazing, because it was noisy. There was errors in the data, but it was just like this for this to even be possible at all is just mad. because when you press text on you're only just playing the videotape back and you press text on remote control, nothing happens. You might get the odd word, but nothing happens. So to get the data from that, it was like, well, this is obviously witchcraft or similar. But that was amazing to do that. I mean, when the first version came out, it used to take absolutely ages to run through. I mean, I've left recoveries going for like days, overnight, and all day. I've just left them going because in the very first versions of the software, you couldn't stop it halfway through because you couldn't stop it halfway through and resume it again later on. It would just start again from scratch. So you had to let it run all the way to the very end. In later versions, Alistair updated it so that you could, stop recovering and then pick it up from where you left off at a later date. And then, as time went by, he'd improved the methods he's used to do the processing on it, on the data. And now the software uses the processing power. If you've got a graphics card, it can use the processing power within the graphics processing unit of that to do the processing. Nowadays, it works by pattern matching. So you have it has a list of known patterns of teletext in there. So, and what you do is you record these known patterns out to videotape, read them back in, but because you know what data went out to the videotape, you can compare it with what came in, and then you've got a difference. And so you could say, well, if I see this pattern of blur on a VHS recording, that corresponds to this data if it was clear. So you can, by using pattern matching, you can basically look at the blur on a VHS recording and it can pick out what the actual data would have been. It's not perfect. It can be perfect on really clear recordings. You can get absolutely almost flawless data recovery from it. I think it's kind of what the recovery quality comes out like. It's so it never makes any sense. You can have the worst looking recording in the world, and you can get brilliant results out of it. Like you can get long play video, for example, looks awful sometimes, but with some long play tapes you can get perfectly reasonable teletext out of it. It's like why? And others it can be just terrible. And I've had really noisy recordings before, like when they had a weak signal, it was all grainy. I've had good results from that before, but on the flip side, there's been recordings that look great on screen, but teletext is absolutely dreadful. Things like ghosting really kills teletext. Teletext does not like ghosting. So anyway, yeah, I mean, Alistair software's. I mean, I started using Alistair software in 2012, and I've been using it ever since, really. And Alistair software fetches the information from the tape, so it outputs the raw teletext data in the same way that the graph edit thing would do with from before, where you could read off-air data with the modular bits from the capture card. So it could output the same files. So those files that came out of Alistair software could be put into my existing teletext suite of software for display. So the current setup that I have really is that Alistair software fetches the data out. I can display it in the software that I've written that's available online, so anybody can use that. And yeah, it's kind of a good sort of symbiotic relationship, really. So the data comes from Alistair, I can display it, in an emulator this side. So it's basically, you can view the teletext service exactly as you would have done were you sitting in front of a TV with a remote control. You can wait for the pages to come round just the same as you'd wait for the pages to come round in front of a TV. So yeah, the tools I've written, of course, they they allow me to go poking around for hidden data as well. So with all the data that comes out from Alice's technique, I can go poking around to see what secrets are within all that data. And I've been recovering teletext now for like over 10 years. So I must have about 2,500 services in the archive, just sitting on my hard drive. I share them to Twitter, as often as time allows, so that it's just to sort of spread the love, really, and on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and from that, I mean, I've got quite a few followers, so there's still a lot of love for teletext out there. Yeah, I mean, I think from that, I thought, well, I've got all these services sitting on my hard drive doing nothing. They could do with being out there, really. So about, when was that? Must be like 2020. I was going to start a master's course in 2020, and I thought, I've got all this stuff here. I really need to get this, because I'm going to be busy on my masters. I'm not going to be able to share pages. I need a good way of sharing pages that that people can just go and fetch their own data and things. So I wrote the teletext archive website, and that uses MVC, and it was really, really quick to develop. It was I hadn't done I used to be a web engineer. My first sort of internet job was a webmaster was my first internet job. So but it was kind of in the early 2000s, and then sort of moved away from that afterwards. But I hadn't done a website for ages, so I was trying to find new technologies to do it with. And I used Microsoft's MVC in the end, and I'd come up with this. It must have only taken a couple of weeks to write the archive. It was really, really quick, because I mean, a lot of the framework was just there, really, because it's about creating records, editing records, viewing records. So really, it was just using that framework and adding in a teletext renderer, which I'd already got from the teletext suite of software before. So it's like, well, I've already got a renderer for changing the raw teletext data into actual viewable pages. So I just used that one. So it was a case of just transplanting that renderer onto a website, and there it was. So it only took a couple of weeks, and I mean, as I speak, it's got. So other teletext recoverers can upload services to that as well, and it's got 1,200 services on it as I speak, which is the equivalent of 1.1 million teletext pages on there, which is a lot of pages.
That's a lot of charts.
So I mean, I know when I first saw Mike Brown's An Evening with CFAX on his website there, I thought, this would be great. We'd love to have more of this. I wasn't expecting to come away with 1.1 million more pages of teletext, but there's all sorts. It's not just UK teletext on there. There's teletext from all over the world on the archive. So
it's incredible to think that this information was treated as if it was never going to be kept, and now it's been recovered. It's completely fascinating, and the audio packets as well. It's sort of like, is that like voices from the past?
Yeah, it's quite ghostly, isn't it? How they sound ghostly because the recovery isn't perfect. I don't think yet. It still sounds a bit odd, and a bit weird, and a bit ghostly. It's a bit like a ghost in a machine. I mean, it's nothing short of remarkable, really. I mean, as you say, teletext was a sort of a medium where it was broadcast, and then it just went after that, because in the early days of teletext, they quite literally just overtyped the data, and it was gone. So there's no backups or anything of any data. A bit later on, I think they had to keep some back for compliance. That just hasn't been deleted for one reason or another. But yeah, it was broadcast and it was gone, and it was just transient. It was here one day, gone the next. And I think it's like there's you think like, well, you could write something on teletext and it would be gone, and then that's no one would ever see that again. It's a good you could hide your sins and CFAX if you like, but now of course we can get it all back and we can see exactly well. So if we have just a recording, it doesn't have to, it's not like we used to have like pages from CFAX where it was actually broadcast in Vision, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be any domestic recording we can get teletext from. Which is a question that I often get. People think it's just like, is it CFAX in Vision that we've got here? But no, it's any VHS or beta tape has teletext on it that can be recovered. And I think it's it's nice. So, having all the data. It's nice. You get queries in sometimes. I get queries in sometimes from people who say like, "Oh, I had this broadcast in the past. Do you have a copy?" I mean, I had a query once from someone whose late father had written some telesoftware, and that was did end up finding that was there, but it needs to be sort of extracted from the. I don't think it's a perfect recovery either, so the data's a bit mashed. It needs extracting from the page to be turned back into software, but there's stuff like that that's there. There's an ongoing project to track, to recover all of Channel 4's Digitizer magazine, and there's a couple of others as well. There's a one to recover Turn of the Worm cartoon strips, and nobody ever thought we'd see them again, and it's nice to be able to. It was nice to be able to get those Digitizer captures and give them back to Paul Rose, the creator, and just say, here's the pages you wrote, in the early days he would tweet them out from his account, but they started coming in at such a rate that now they're sort of curated by Superpage 58, and there's an enormous part of all broadcast digitizers has been recovered. More are coming through all the time. So eventually, I'm sure we'll have most, if not all, of that service been recovered. So it's nice to sort of be able to basically reunite a creator with the work that they've done, that they thought was lost forever. I'm sure one day it'll appear.
Yeah. And have you found the Holy Grail that you're looking for? I believe the first editor of CFAX, Colin McIntyre, used to leave messages for his wife who'd be watching the teletext page at home. This much fabled, put the dinner on, I'm making my way back. Have we got closer to finding that yet?
No, we haven't. I suspect that will have happened very, very early on. So I would imagine that he would have had. It wouldn't be a hidden page like as in hidden data. It would just be a page that wasn't indexed. So it'll be a page in the service. Say, I don't know, 184 or something. So his wife might dial 184 in on the set, and only she would know that number was there. If you saw it getting passed in the header, you'd know it was there. But it wasn't in the index. So 99.99% of people wouldn't have known it was there. So I suspect it's a sort of a normal page, but just not indexed. And I also think that would be really, really early on.
You'd be on Esmeralda, the first board, and that would have been overwritten quite quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at 75, 76, I would imagine that would be, and teletext services from that period are very few and far between.
Although you did manage to capture one, haven't you? Because I've seen that on your website, a very early recovery from 75, I think.
Yeah, that's right. From CFAX was only 11 months old at the time of that recovery. So that's sort of really, that's kind of like, I don't know, it's got to be up there with one of the, if not my favourite recovery. I think that would be the 1975 one, because that's quite interesting. I mean, with the 1975 pages, the teletext spec itself wasn't even finalised. It was fluid. It was moving all the time. So all the control codes to say, change the colour of text, or to put it into graphics mode, or to do, whatever other things. We didn't have, in the early days, for example, they didn't have double height. They just had basically text and a graphics mode. Didn't have reveal, things like that. The spec itself was fluid up until it got formalised in 1976. So these earlier pages don't even match the teletext standard. It's some other sort of intermediate standard that they had beforehand. And it's like I'd got this data, and it's like, but I can't read it because I don't know what the codes do. You can see the text, but it's like, well, is this bit of text, is it supposed to be white, or is it like meant to be red, and I don't know what the code is. I mean, I've done searches for the old specs before, but I've really put some effort into it, and managed to find it in a online copy of Wireless World, that they got all the codes listed. So finally, I knew what all the codes meant. I mean, there's quite a few standards in between when it was first developed in 1974 up until 1976. In those 2 years, there's quite a few different, in inverted commas, standards that were used at the time until it settled down. In the sort of teletext standard was September 1976 that they finally decided that, and even then, they'd said the standard is now, this is what the standard is, bang, September 1976, this is what it is. But there were still decoders out there that were using the old code tables. So there's a lot, and electronics enthusiasts had old ROMs, and they had to switch them over and things. So even though we had new tables, the old ones are still in use for quite a while. I think I've got one from March or April 1976, and there's a page on there, and that's talking about how the old codes are on BBC Two, but the new ones are on BBC One.
With your website, then, do you have any more? Are you just going to keep going and just keep getting as many tapes as you can converted? Because you must be inundated with tapes at the moment.
I do have a fair few. I mean, people are very, very generous at donating tapes. I mean, getting the tapes here is quite the thing. 'Cause it's expensive to post tapes and things. The internet is eBay is awash with VHS videotapes as well. I mean, you've got to try and find the right ones. It depends what you're looking for, really. There are so many recordings from the 2000s, 2010 and stuff, because everybody recorded stuff onto VHS, didn't they, in the 2000s and 2010s, so there'd be loads of recordings there, but people will have reused videotapes, so even if they recorded older stuff on there, it got reused and overwritten. So a good place to look for old teletext is the very end of videotapes, where people have stopped the recording, but an earlier recording still exists, right at the very end, where they've stopped the tape.
Tomorrow's world is here for you today. Come and play.
Have you ever been contacted by the BBC or ITV with regards to any of your recoveries?
Never ITV. There doesn't seem to be... I think it did have a bit on it. It had a flourish of publicity on News at 10 that time, when Peter Kwan first did TFAX. So he was on News at 10 with that. So that's the ITV. I think it's the only interest I've seen on ITV. I could be wrong, but it's the sort of main one. The BBC seem to have a bit more interest in it. I've been on a few BBC programmes, mostly local radio. I've been on Radio Sheffield, I think, Ulster with Nathan. And I did a bit on Radio 6, unbelievably, on Lauren Laverne's show. So I got a lot of positive feedback from there. That's probably where a lot of my followers have come from on Twitter. But so it's the BBC have shown more interest in it. I think they haven't shown very much interest. Well, they haven't shown any interest in the actual archive itself. You'd think they can. You'd think they would. You'd think they'd be interested in it. I know they're obviously interested in recovering old TV programs that have gone missing, but they're not interested in recovering CFAX. They're not. I don't know why. Because I mean, newspapers have archives, don't they? I mean, newspapers have searchable online archives, and why is teletext any different? It was kind of an on-screen newspaper with the advantage of being non-partisan, so it's unbiased, unlike newspapers. So it's certainly a valid archive candidate, really. But it's really, I suppose the only sort of archive is the teletext archive that we have.
Well, it's certainly a very valuable archive. So where can we find you on Twitter?
On Twitter, I am at Grim_Fandango. Now, I know, that's just, well, I didn't even know what Twitter was when I set that up. I thought, people go on about Twitter. I'll go and find out what the deal is with Twitter. So I just signed up that with that username. And I had no intention of starting a teletext feed with it. But this is what we've got. This is what we're stuck with. So it's anyway. Teletext Archaeologist doesn't fit in the Twitter. You can't have that many. So it's at Grim_Fandango. Also on Facebook as the Teletext Archaeologist. That the website is at www.teletextarchaeologist.org, and the archive itself is at archive.teletextarchaeologist.org. So they're the places to go. Absolutely
brilliant. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Jason. And,
thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and that's been excellent. Thank you very much. You have been listening to Teletext People. Teletext People is presented by me, Carl Attrell, and is a bite-high, no-limit production. I really enjoy making these podcasts. However, if you do want to help out the hosting costs, you can do so by finding the link in the description.